What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Time Killers podcast. My name's Neil Rivera, and I'm killing time once again with Mr. Matthew Field. What's going on, Matt?
Happy to be here, as always.
And for the first time ever, I'm killing time with my wife, the mother of my children, the love of my life, Alex Rivera. How are you, Alex?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm glad that you joined me to talk all things Pokémon Legends Z to A. Alex is like the diehard Pokemon aficionado of our house. So this was a day one purchase for her. So we're going to be talking about that. And then back half of the show, Matthew and I are going to talk about the new Splinter Cell animated series, Splinter Cell Deathwatch, which we're both very excited about. But yeah, with that being said, let's just jump right into it. Alex, Pokemon Legends Z to A. This is, of course, the follow-up to Pokemon Legends Arceus. So it's not a mainline Pokemon game, but it's taking us back to Lumio City, right? Yes. Talk to me about, there's, obviously, the Legends Arceus was sort of known for, sort of like giving it this more like open world sort of feel. You're kind of out exploring. It seems like with Z to A, the main sort of shift and focus seems to be on the battle system. So why don't you talk to me about like how the battle system in Pokemon Legends Z to A works and like how it compares to previous Pokemon games and what you feel and how you feel about it.
Sure. So the battle system is a bit more of a real-time situation versus it being a turn-based. It's still an RPG, which I enjoy. I felt weird about it at first, and then I enjoyed it a little bit more because I am not typically one to like timed cooldowns.
Yeah.
For a lot of
the big like sort of like the main change here is that it's no longer turn based, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not selecting out of 4 moves from a list and right. Like, I take a turn, you take a turn. It's more active. You, the trainer, are moving around like the sort of arena. You're controlling your Pokemon and they've got the 4 moves, but they're all kind of like on different cooldowns.
Yeah. So it depends on like your power of the move and essentially, it's the cooldown, it has it kind of like the PP moves that it used to have. So similar to like, let's say Flamethrower had like a 5-point system, whereas it has like a 10-second cooldown.
Yeah, so you don't run into those like arbitrary like limits of like, oh, I need to use an elixir here, or I need to go back to the Pokemon Center to like recharge the uses of this one particular move. It's just kind of always there, and it's kind of always recharging in the background. Mm-hmm. And so like I imagine like different abilities, different moves, like they have different cooldowns. How does that work?
Yeah, so the different cooldowns, it really depends on the power of the Pokemon move, essentially. Right. But from onto the question you asked was I enjoy the battle system. I enjoy the battle system now. And I'm actually I actually prefer it at this point because it's more fun because you're dodging the moves. And I know that's been a thing that Arceus Legends had, which they're really implemented into the Z to A this time. So now I'm losing my train of thought.
But like, okay, so I think that's a good, overall you feel pretty good. Like the one thing that really stood out to me from like watching you played it, was the fact that like lesser known moves like Leer and Growl and Tail Whip, like because, obviously like everyone sort of, opts for the more offensive, moves down the road. But like, it seems like with this new cooldown system, like there's kind of more of an incentive for you to use those abilities. Do you find yourself using like the status effect ones or like, any of the more technical abilities more, or are you just purely offensive?
So in the main game, it's purely offensive because, you play the game and you want to beat it.
Yeah.
But in the ranked battles, you want to use those moves because, for example, like poisoning status effects, that actually, I didn't realize it until recently, that it actually really takes your HP and it knocks you out because you don't even realize that you're out. you're poisoned.
Well, right, because
So-
at least in like the traditional turn-based Pokemon, it was like, okay, new turn, I take damage. Like, so this one is kind of like, it's kind of always happening, I imagine.
And then the other thing is, like, for example, I was exploring, and I didn't realize that my Houndoom, for example, was cursed, and I was like, oh, you were losing HP, why are you losing HP?
Yeah.
So it was constantly just losing HP because of the curse.
Gotcha.
Instead of it, like, you know how in the normal Pokemon game, it's like, oh, it was hurt by poison. It doesn't tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the battles feel like they're balanced well? Like, did you ever run into any instances where like you were really getting your ass kicked a whole bunch, or like, does it seem like it's fair? Considering it's a brand new system.
So, just like in Arceus, there's Alpha Pokemon, and that is where you get your ass handed to yourself, essentially.
If you haven't been following on social media, like the TikToks that Alex has shown me of like trainers running terrified from these alpha Pokemon is really something to behold.
Yeah, I actually encountered a Alpha Houndoom in one of the areas, and I had to sacrifice multiple Pokemon, and I was so scared. But that was really fun. I eventually did catch that Houndoom.
Well, there you go. And then, so, I mean, moving on to, like, the sort of, like, the next big change that they've sort of done here is, well, I guess it's not really the big change. It's more of a continuation of sort of the more open world focus that they introduced in Legends Arceus. But this one takes place specifically in Lumio City, which, if for those of you who weren't familiar with Pokemon X and Y, is like the big main capital city of that region. So do you find yourself, like, is there enough to do in the city? Is there like plenty to like explore, or do you kind of find yourself missing like the different routes and the different biomes of like a traditional Pokemon game?
So it's very streamlined in the sense of, like, the further you progress in the story, you unlock more areas, but it encourages you to explore those areas before. The other thing is, with Lumnius City, they introduced you can climb scaffolding, you can get on the rooftops, and it's weird seeing like Flabébé and like Pikachu on the buildings.
Yeah.
But it's fun going through it, and it kind of like I find myself going to new areas where I'm like, oh wait, I didn't know this existed. The other thing about it is there's lots of side quests, and I want to say there's at least like 200 side quests, so it keeps you busy.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned on like exploring, like what's there, like I guess like what get into some of like the side quests, and like obviously the main story is you're trying to be the best Pokemon trainer, yada yada yada, but the side quests, are they intriguing? Are they compelling? Like, do they encourage you to explore?
Yeah, there's so I'll use this one for example. There was a Litwick one, and it's this child. She's like, he says, hey, I can't find my sister. A Litwick, essentially found her, and then at the end of it, you find them. You go through like sewers that you because you have the rooftops. It's kind of like, in a way, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, there's an underground kind of thing.
Yeah. And the rooftops too, right?
Yeah,
so
the rooftops.
Yeah.
And so it makes me enjoy it a little bit more because of the side quests. They're like, oh, you're talking to the people in the city. Like, there's one side quest about a Sylveon who wants to make people happy, and you want to make them happy, and it makes it a little bit more like endearing, I guess.
Yeah.
And you get a bit more emotional with it.
Yeah,
but that's personal, me personally.
No, there's a lot more. I mean, from what I've seen, there's a lot more like slice of life. Pokemon are, like they really tap into sort of the energy that they explored with the Detective Pikachu movie, where it's like very much trying to capture that feeling of like humans and Pokemon coexisting, and like like you could just run up on the rooftop and see like different Pokemon and catch different Pokemon. Yeah, no, I mean, spoiler alert, Matthew, I haven't told you this, but sitting back and watching Alex play this motivated me to also shout out to Wario64, because he posted that Pokemon Center had 15%, they were taking 15% off of Switch 2s, so I got a Switch 2 Pokemon Z to A bundle. just based off of Alex watching it or watching Alex play it. Just because I feel like the changes and sort of the like the way that they have adapted sort of the core battle system, it's speaking to me as like an elder Pokemon head.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Yeah. So I mean, yeah. And speaking of like elder Pokemon heads here, like I was very into the early Pokemon games in the series, but I have not played one. I think the last one that I really sunk any like significant time into was Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
That's a good one.
And I kind of like I've dabbled a little bit in some of the more recent ones since then, but I haven't touched Arceus or Scarlet and Violet at all. And so I mean, like I've been following along as some of these these shifts towards the more real time gameplay have gone. I mean, it seems like they've done the more audacious changes in Legends, the ones they're branding, you know, as Legends. So, and I mean, by all accounts, it seems like these are really successful, both in terms of critically and commercially. Do we like, is Zeta A, you know, assuming it sells as well as it seems like it is going to, do you guys think that this is the point at where they truly sort of merge the branches and we get our next mainline Pokemon games in a full sort of real-time format like this? Or do you think they're still, you know, going to hedge their bets a little bit, that there are some Pokemon fans who are after that more traditional turn-based experience?
So I think, so they've already mentioned that Legends is gonna be its own thing, similar to like Mystery Dungeon, right? But I don't think that they're gonna create the, you know, so next gen. I don't think it's gonna be a real time one. I think it's still gonna be a traditional turn base.
Coming from Scarlet and Violet to this, like, do you see that being like, would you prefer that they do the real-time combat system? Because I'm also on the same side of you, where like the communication so far has been like Legends is its own thing, and like Gen 10 will be its own thing, which to me suggests like, yeah, we're gonna keep the same battle system more or less. But would you rather have this new battle system in mainline Pokemon games moving forward? No,
absolutely not.
Really?
Because of how competitive games work. But I also haven't completely played competitive on this yet. So, but the way that these competitive games are is you are which I know that there's a certain way that you can do this. They streamline your team in order to be the best team. And we're still learning the mechanics of everything. But I don't think it should be a real time. I think it's a good thing for Legends, but just because it's so different, like, I'll use Mystery Dungeon, for example. It's kind of, in a way, also turn-based, but also real time. So it's its own mechanic, similar to how, like, in every generation you have like megas, then they get rid of the megas and then they come back and they're like, oh hey, here's the Z moves. And so it's a different gimmick that they have. So I don't think a traditional Pokemon game should have the real time.
And I mean, the response to the sort of new combat system has been a little bit more divisive. I have seen or listened, heard like people say like, you know, it can be a little like, you know, mindless. You know, you're kind of just waiting for your cooldowns to recharge, and so it's definitely not perfect from what I've seen and heard and read. But like, as somebody who is sort of been looking for Pokemon to take that next step, I think this sort of resembles the foundations of a first step.
Right.
So it's like it's like a baby step, if you will.
Yeah. Matthew, have you seen any gameplay? Have you played any of the game yet?
Of Zeta A?
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched a bit of it. Yeah, I've seen a good bit, and honestly, what really is interesting is, and you guys touched on this a little bit, is how this is set all within a city, right? And there's it seems like there's more
Right.
actual traversal and stuff within the city than you typically get in other Pokemon games.
Yeah, I think people like fans of like traditional Pokemon games where you're going from town to town and like kind of getting like a feel for the region as a whole will be a little bit disappointed because it is just all takes place within the confines of the one city.
There's good reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I was gonna say, Alex, I'm sure, like, I mean, we can get into sort of like the more story and like your overall thoughts as well. But you know, my theory is that this is sort of, you know, like kind of going back to what I said originally was that like this is like the foundation. And like I think this was really, especially after Scarlet and Violet, and obviously like I'm sure these games were in development like sort of like at the same time. But I mean, with the reception around the performance of that game, I can see there being an argument for like, okay, let's contain this in this one city. Let's get it working. Let's get it working well. And to this game's credit, like it runs well. It looks great. It looks way better than Scarlet and Violet did, and runs a lot better too. So my theory is that like, okay, now that they've got this sort of like in-city system working, now they can sort of explore branching out into different regions and areas. Because that was another big change from like Pokemon Legends Arceus. That all took place in these sort of like different, like you had to like go back to your home base and then you would go back into the different areas and there's all these different areas that you could eventually go and explore. This one is all just like, boom, you're here in the city and you're like exploring and it's like totally open. It's just a smaller space.
Well, okay, so talking about Legends Arceus, the more I was thinking about it, you are only in one town. If you really think about it, you're only in one town and you have these wild areas that you have unlocked. So it's not so different.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's just it does feel smaller because if you compare it on that scale, then it's, you know, you're like, oh, you're only confined to the city, but there's other things about the city that make it feel bigger.
Yeah.
Like I find myself getting lost a lot. So like the battle zones is a good example where it's when you go into the battle zones, most of the time during the day you're just running around and you're like, oh, look at this. And then you go through the battle zones. There's like, oh, I did not know that this was a little alley that you can go through. So it's just things like that that make it feel bigger.
The battle zones are like areas where you can catch Pokemon, right?
No, the battle zones are where you rank up from Z to A.
Yeah.
You have to get challenger tickets to get to your next promotion battle. It's a very interesting mechanic.
Yeah, I was going to say, get into that a little bit more because there's no traditional, you know, obviously everything takes place in the one city, so there's no traditional gym system. So yeah, talk about like what the Z to A, like going from Z to A entails and like, you know.
So I know that there's a traditional gym system, which Scarlet and Violet also didn't have. But this one is a little different because you're ranking to be the best.
It's like you're climbing a leaderboard, so to speak.
You're climbing a leaderboard and you're battling, I want to say, throughout the ranks. I'm trying not to spoil anything, but you know,
it's Pokemon.
You're battling and let's just say you don't exceed a certain amount of people. But it's interesting. The boss battles are very fun. I really enjoy them. The music is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like electro swing, which is amazing. I don't know if anyone's into that, but I love it.
Yeah, it's straight like nonstop jams. And I mean, as someone who, so I mean, yeah, get into, you know, like overall how you're feeling about it. So I mean, like, is the story good? You know, obviously we've talked about the gameplay plenty. Like, what all like really stands out to you beyond like the stuff that we've talked about so far?
So if y'all have played, obviously, if you're a Pokemon fan, you've played X and Y, which is where I actually picked it back up. I don't know if anyone knows that, you know, Black and White, I didn't really get into it, but X and Y really picked up my love for Pokemon again because it was a lot of fun and it has a really good backstory. And so the story follows Az, who was a character in X and Y, and the legend is essentially about him versus it being about like a legendary Pokemon. And it takes place 5 years after X and Y. So it's a continuation of X and Y. It's like the here's Z.
Yeah.
We know you wanted Pokemon Z, but here it is. in a different way.
Yeah, and they had to throw the Z in the title just to like, wink, wink, nod, nod.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I mean, I think, for those of us, because like Y was very much a reintroduction to the series for me as well. And that was the one thing that stood out to me when I played it, was that like, damn, like they really went hard with the story and like the characters and like the sort of like the backdrop to the world. So it's cool to, that we get another game set in this region and like get to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah.
So Lumios was in X and Y, as like the actual location was in the previous games too, right?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like the capital city.
And so did they, I mean, are there Easter eggs and stuff in the city for like, if you went, I don't know how big of a location it was in X and Y, but did they at least make like reference, or did they change the city wholesale, or like how did they evolve the city, going from what was like a 2D space to something that's fully explorable? Did they try to stick to the same layout, if you can remember what the old one was, or did they kind of just do whatever they wanted?
So in X and Y, it was so you went around in a circle, essentially. Mm-hmm. And there were like, I think in X and Y, there was like 2 layers of it. One layer was the outer city, and then the second layer was the inner city. But you couldn't necessarily go through like the alleys like they do. So they kind of like explored a little bit. There are Easter eggs in the matter of like Looker's Bureau is in it, and then the Pokemon Laboratory is in it. So it's like those little Easter eggs that I appreciate, because they brought back a character named Emma, and she was Looker's like apprentice in the game, and I loved Looker because he was like Sherlock Holmes. And so they bring her back, and she's like 5 years later, and then I mean it's interesting because they've added on so much, because they have like these scaffolding
Yeah.
scaffolding and ladders that you can go over, but they've expanded quite a lot on the city, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, lots of side quests, lots of stuff to do, so that's cool. I mean, like it seems like they went like full open world, which is awesome. Now
open world with the capabilities of one city, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, totally. Now I have to put you on the spot because I know you're a Pokemon fanatic.
Okay.
But if you had to like pick the things that sort of like you wish they, like your nitpicks, your gripes, what are the things that you sort of like, especially like whether it's coming from Scarlet to this or, Legends Arceus to this, like what are the things that like you keep coming back to, like while you're playing, it's like, oh damn, like I wish they had done something different with this, or I wish they hadn't done this way? Or is it nothing? Or are you just glowing about it?
I mean, it's I don't know, because I'm really enjoying it at this point. But I will say, I do wish there was a little bit more. One thing I wish that they did do, it's kind of a spoiler.
Spoiler bros.
It's the way that you rank up. I was expecting to go completely from Z to A. There's a point in the game where you have to essentially become the best, and you go from like rank X to F suddenly.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. That's the only thing. And I think like I've talked to our friend Dusty about it, and he even was like, what the heck? I wanted to go through the whole thing. I'm like, I know. So, but that's really the only thing that I can think of. But otherwise it's pretty great.
Yeah. Even the setup for like ranking up is like really cool, because like there's the whole day-night cycle, which I don't know if there's anything like consequential about that you really want to speak to, but like, what the one thing that stuck out to me was like, daytime is kind of like the more exploration, like you're going around the city doing stuff, and then at night is when like the battles happen.
Yes, I mean you can still explore because you have the nighttime spawns, but what's interesting too about the day and night cycle is, I didn't realize this, but the map has like a timer where it's like it goes around, where it's like starts at the top and it even warns you. It's like, hey, dawn is approaching. And I didn't realize that it was a little timer that goes around of like, hey, when do you have the next day? So it was interesting.
Yeah,
about
it's the
day and
first
night.
Pokemon game, as far as I know, to do something like that, where it's got like a day-night cycle, and like it's got a very like oh god, what's the like indoor soccer, or like out, what is it, like soccer that I forget the name of the like the type of soccer that like it's played like outdoors, like on rooftops, smaller,
Yeah.
but like it's got like that vibe to it, where it's like you're going out at night and like battling Pokemon, like trying to rank up, like almost like a like not like an illegal street racing vibe, but like
Yeah.
it's kind of like a legal street racing vibe to it.
It's actually really funny because in the beginning of the game, let me just say the tutorial. Oh, that's the thing.
Yes.
That's what it was. The tutorial was really long. I understand. I was like, okay, I get that it's a brand new mechanic. I get that it's a brand new game, but oh my god, does the tutorial have to be an hour long?
Every Pokemon game has to treat you as if this is the very first time that you have touched a Pokemon game, because that is just how they operate.
Yeah.
You'd feel like that if any game in the series was going to buck that trend, it would be the Legends games. But I guess even that was a bridge too far for them.
I think the reason why it was so long, Matthew, is because it was such a new mechanic. And I was even like, I don't think I need a tutorial. And then I went through the tutorial. I was like, oh, I needed this tutorial.
Oh, that's
Alex
fair. Yeah.
struggled for a bit early on there. She was very conflicted on the new battle system, but I knew like I knew within like 30 seconds of seeing it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of fire. So I'm glad you kind of warmed up to it as you played, and I'm excited to play and like blow through this thing once I get my hands on it. My new Switch gets here tomorrow, guys.
So by the time you're listening to this podcast, it will be with Neil.
Oh yeah, I'll be playing Pokemon Z to A on my own. Any closing thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is about the shiny hunting.
Ooh, yeah. Shiny
hunting has gotten... Okay, so I haven't actually started officially shiny hunting, but it's a lot easier. There's a way that you can like... So every time you restart, so there's a part where you can take lots of pictures. You can, take pictures with your Pokemon. You can sit and rest with your Pokemon. And there's a way where you can auto start the cycle of like, hey, would you like to rest all night? Or anyway, what I'm getting at is each time you rest, it ends up respawning the Pokemon, but the shiny Pokemon end up staying throughout the entire time, which is very interesting.
The like the day reset is when so I mean it's like I think the like the day night cycle has some criticism, some critiques, but I think the lone positive, at least the one positive that you really pointed out to me, was that like if a shiny Pokemon pops up and you don't have Pokeballs, or you need to go run and do something, like that shiny Pokemon will essentially stay there until the day resets, as opposed to like, oh well, you lost your chance.
Yeah. And I think now I'm trying to figure out how it works, because there's another area where there's like a tower that you go up and down, and people have like gone up and down multiple times, and that resets it as well. So it's kind of like, does it reset because of the load screen? Does it reset because of the day and night? Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things.
I imagine it's a load screen thing, because then the day night cycle probably triggers a load screen. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I would imagine any load screen, then it's like, yep, nope, sorry.
Yeah. And then the other thing, there's been a lot of people are like, oh, well, this takes down the value of shiny Pokemon. And I'm like, okay, but shiny hunting is hard.
Those are also the weird nerds that are scalping Pokemon cards. So I wouldn't really take too much stock in what they're saying or doing and complaining about.
I'm one of those weird nerds now.
Well, hey, Alex, thanks for joining us to talk about Pokemon Legends Z to A. This was wonderful. It's available. It's Switch 1 and Switch 2. But obviously the Switch 2 version is immaculate. That's what we've been playing. Where can people go follow you?
Blue Sky.
She's Siren130 at bluesky.social, y'all. So go follow her, go give her some love. She's going to drop out to go play some more Pokemon Legends Z to A. Matthew and I are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Splinter Cell Deathwatch. And we're back. Matthew, it's been too damn long since I've had a good Splinter Cell story to really sink my teeth in. You know what I mean?
Boy, has it.
If only Ubisoft, in lieu of releasing anything new with Sam Fisher, dropped a animated series on Netflix for me to enjoy, my favorite secret agent. Yeah, guys, Splinter Cell Deathwatch. It's out on Netflix. It is Ubisoft in collaboration with Netflix, and it's out. We've seen it. Full disclosure, we're gonna get into like deep spoilers. I don't think there's really a ton to spoil here, but just for those of you who want to watch it without any sort of like, who want to go into it fresh, we are gonna kind of talk about the series or the season from start to finish. Matthew, I'm going to start with you. Well, I guess you're the only one I can start with, but Matthew, tell me how you felt about it, top level.
Yeah, before we dig in, I'll say that the only people who should be wary of spoilers here are the hardcore Splinter Cell fans who have already watched this. I don't think, I don't think there's too much that can really be spoiled to take away from your enjoyment of this series. But I think so. I was not really looking forward to this. I love the Splinter Cell series, but I kind of had just given up hope of getting something new. 12 years without a new release, and no new release on the horizon will do that to you. But
you mean VR, the Meta Quest? You don't want to do that?
No, not really. What did they release for the Meta?
I think it's strictly,
or is it a remake?
I don't even think it's out yet. I think they announced it, and I think it's been in development hell forever. So like that just speaks more to the state of Splinter Cell as a franchise right now.
Is that what the original remake was? Because I know the one I knew they had announced was the remake of Splinter Cell 1, which they announced and then have not said anything else about. Like we never even got a trailer, I don't think, for that.
I didn't even realize that it was supposed to be a remake. So yeah, I mean, all this to say that the state of new Splinter Cell releases is bleak. But you were saying about your thoughts on the show.
Yeah, so I mean, my expectations were pretty low, but this cleared them easily. This show is really good. I think it shows that there is a path to modernizing the Splinter Cell franchise in a way that will be palatable to audiences that have grown away or just never were into the stealth, like the heavy stealth gameplay of the original games. The tone of the show, leans much more closely to something like James Bond or Mission Impossible. Movies and franchises.
I even saw a John Wick reference as well, John Wick comparison as well, and I would say that's accurate.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that was that was going to be my next point here, which is this show was created by Derek Kolstad, who created John Wick. So the John Wick comparisons here are for good reason and accurate. And this is the first Splinter Cell property in a post John Wick world. We've had 5 John Wick movies if you count Ballerina in the time since we've had the last Splinter Cell game, if that puts that in perspective for you. But yeah, I mean, like this shows that, I don't think you could make a game exactly like this without spending like, Call of Duty money making a campaign.
Yeah.
But it shows that you can have a tone like this and do some creative things with stealth and also with action. I think this has been really well received, I think. And, it shows that there's still an appetite for this franchise.
Yeah, that was my initial like gut reaction was like, damn, this would have been so good as a game story. And like I can see, like it almost feels like this was sort of like they took the bones of a video game story that they probably scrapped and they just kind of fleshed it out a little bit more. I mean, I'm with you in that. I think that this was very good. I think the things that it does very well is, you know, like you kind of alluded to, where it's just like the action is really tight. It's choreographed really well. I mean, I think it's intense and it's violent and it's, you know, in ways that like the original Splinter Cell series, like save maybe like, you know, Double Agent and Conviction maybe. Like, you know, most of them were pretty like above board, like sort of more governmental, you know, like we have to do this above board kind of thing. Whereas, you know, this one wasn't afraid to be more edgy and, you know, violent, definitely for sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, you know, I can definitely see like why, you know, I don't know. I think I guess we can address the sort of elephant in the room as it relates to the story, in that this, you know, Deathwatch introduces a second Splinter agent in the form of, oh God, McKenna is her last name.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that was my sort of, you know, like, damn, like I remember you know, it was like a pre-E3 predictions episode of Kind of Funny. And one of Greg Miller's predictions was like he essentially pitched this story where it's like old Sam bringing up an up and coming Splinter agent. He kind of gets roped into this thing, whatever. And like, honestly, like, I think as it relates to Splinter Cell stories and like the stories that they've told so far, like I think that's probably the most interesting to me, is like, yeah, like what is an old Sam, like, you know, I think in like bringing Grimm's daughter back and like having their, you know, their relationship be what it is after the games, you know, I thought all of that was really, really well done. Everything with the existing characters I really liked. My gripes tend to be like, I did have more gripes with like the tone. You know, I think my gripes are more like general Ubisoft gripes at this point, where it's like I feel like the themes of their games, the sort of like the messages of their games, like it kind of just gets lost in the sauce. They use a lot of current events and like sort of controversial subjects as like set dressing, but they don't really do anything like with it. And you know, like applying that here to Splinter Cell and Deathwatch, where it's like I feel like climate change was like a big factor, but they really only touched on it like adjacent, just to sort of give the main villain her sort of motivation.
Yeah, it was a bit like set dressing, you know, like it was there in the background as like, oh, that's cool, like I see what they're doing there, but it was not integral to the plot at hand.
Yeah, and overall, like the you know, the Shetland siblings, the sort of main antagonists, I wasn't too keen on as like bad. Like it really seemed like they did the like generic like Far Cry, or at least the formulaic Far Cry, where it's like, you know, oh, I'm you know, like I'm a little on edge and I'm a little crazy, like what am I gonna do, you know, like that kind of thing. But I mean, I think beyond that, like I think I think McKenna was a very strong character. You know, I thought like the whole, you know, the rebuilt, like the fourth echelon is what they ended up calling themselves instead of third echelon. I think the whole like fourth echelon squad was really, really strong, and like how they all interacted with each other by the end. I mean, episode 5 was my favorite episode, where it was like very much like a Mission Impossible style. They're all working together. Like you kind of like, it felt like a culmination of that point.
Yes.
And yeah, no, I mean, it was, I thought the scenes where the team was like all sort of like working together was really where I was like hooked on the show the most, and like really where I felt like, oh man, like this could have been a great game. But I also agree that it probably would have been too expensive to make and too complicated.
Yeah, so I think it's worth calling out here that like fourth echelon was introduced in, I believe, the last Splinter Cell game as the evolution of third echelon after it became like infiltrated or whatever and had to be you know, shut down and rebooted. And the whole plot with Shetland, what's the Shetland father's name?
Oh yeah, I can't remember his name, but the father, yeah, with
Douglas Shetland,
yeah.
Who was one of the key figures in the the early Splinter Cell games. He was definitely in Chaos Theory, and I think he was
Really?
in
I don't remember
Pandora
that.
Tomorrow too. And that so I mean, they went deep on some of the lore here.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Sam's friendship with him was detailed in those early games. I remember that. But you know, you're mining a relationship that is like that people haven't thought about in 20 years.
Yeah.
And so I get, I mean, I like, on one hand, I like that they did the homage to that and that they kind of extended, you know, a character from the past and that was close to Sam emotionally, you know, it's like if you think about what would bring him back in and make it meaningful, a meaningful Sam Fisher story for this point in his life after everything he's been through, going back to not only one of the original Splinter Cell games, but one of his friends, you know, turned enemies early in life. I think it, when you cast it through that lens, it looks a bit better. It's just unfortunate that this is coming so long after anyone has thought about any of this, you know?
Yeah, no, and I mean to like, you know, for me to clarify too, like I think the stuff that they did with Doug Shetland and Sam and like, you know, exploring their past together, like even as someone who totally forgot about them, I thought that stuff was really well done. I was just a little bit more disappointed in how it translated to the children, where it's like I didn't really feel, you know, like too much, you know, from Diana, and then like Charlie, the half brother, just ended up being like, you know, nothing.
It
just
ended up being
like,
anticlimactic.
crazy.
Like the way they tied things up at the end, I felt was a little too tidy. Like they I mean, it was an interesting twist, and I'm not gonna say explicitly what happened, but you know, the way that they went at the end was kind of interesting, but then you get that stinger of a final scene and you're like, oh, okay. Like they really just kind of wanted to clear the table here at the end of the season. Where as for a minute, it was looking like they were going to like leave a lot of threads dangling for season 2, which it has been renewed for. So
awesome.
I thought that was it could have been an interesting decision, but I think they played a little bit safe in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it needed maybe 2 more episodes, and I think that kind of like, I think, you know, you could tell overall that this was sort of like a testing ground, just to see if this would hit, and you know, I feel like season 2 will address a lot of these issues. But yeah, I mean, I think you know, overall, like, I mean, I think the stuff with McKenna was really well done too. Like her past life, I think she was, you know, I would say she was an immediately compelling character, just given like what she goes through, and like her arc overall was very, very satisfying. So yeah, not just all about Sam as well. I think McKenna, and like, I mean, going back to the you know, like the premise of this being a game, like I could totally see myself playing a Splinter Cell game just with her as the main protagonist, you know, like if that's something that they want to build to in the future. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, like we're talking about like basically like, and this is another franchise that's sort of a comparison here that we haven't mentioned, which is Metal Gear Solid. You know, they have like the Raiden infusion of like a different perspective and youth, and like someone who is a little bit rougher than your sort of you know, series mainstay who's aging a little bit in Solid Snake. So there's some parallels there. But I think McKenna was done really well. You know, the way they tied her in with her backstory here was really good. I would like to see more of her. I think, you know, the earlier episodes focused more on her, and later episodes just kind of became more about the mission. I think those early episodes where they focused on her and her motivations and you know, her dealing with some like trauma in her life, those were really effective. You know, and how she established a bond with Sam over that. Like those are some of my favorite episodes, those earlier ones.
And I mean, they did a great job, you know, sort of making the two like similar with, like as one another. Like there's a lot of overlap, a lot of, I think Grimm's daughter has a line, because they both essentially disobey orders in one episode, and like Grimm's daughter had like a one-liner that was essentially like, okay, now that you're both back, or like, something like that. And it just kind of like, it kind of led, like, I don't know, it kind of just led more to that, like, yeah, I could see myself playing a game as her, where like she's kind of the same temperament as Sam. She's got, she's younger, she's got more energy, but a different perspective. And I mean, yeah, like her story was immediately like compelling to me.
Yeah, it's sort of what they're doing with like James Bond, the new James Bond game, which I think is going to be a good litmus test for, how a new game in the Splinter Cell franchise could fare. They're going with a younger James Bond. Like rather than making a new character, they're just rolling back the clock. So where he's a little bit more impulsive and, just to make a little bit more exciting, a little messier, which I think you could also get from McKenna being, an earlier in career operative than Sam.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to close with two questions. So the first is like, how are you feeling overall about this strategy from Ubisoft, like their entertainment strategy as a whole? Because I mean, like for me, like I think between this and Captain Laserhawk, and I don't know, have they done another animated show, or is it just those two? But Captain Laserhawk was like phenomenal, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I thought they'd done one other series, but I could be misremembering. I'll have to.
But do you see this as like, do you see this as like a viable, do you see this like being something that they can do for Watch Dogs or Assassin's Creed? And, like, do you see a world where there's like just Ubisoft animated shows everywhere?
Yeah, I do. I think, they're 2 for 2, right? And unless there's another one that we're forgetting. But between Laserhawk and this, they've shown that they know how to do this. They know how to execute this. And I think this is a good way for them to keep, they have a huge lineup of franchises. Yeah. And with the troubles they've had getting some just games out the door, like developed and made in a complete state, I think the cynical side of me says that they can keep sort of mining those franchises in this way while they figure out what to do with games. But it may also be that this is just what you get from some of these series now. Like, rather than leaving them completely dormant, when they're not going to be making a new game for a while or something, they could have a series in that world where they know fans are hungry for new content since they haven't gotten any new games. Which there's pros and cons to that, but look, if it's between this and nothing, I would rather have this, especially because these shows are good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree with you because like that was another thought that popped into my head and it kind of goes into my last question, where it's like, do you see a a future for Splinter Cell that does include video games? And what does that look like to you?
I think there is a future for the franchise, but it's not what it has been. If you look back at the Splinter Cell franchise, they weren't really playing it safe for a lot of those games. Like they were making big swings to try to modernize this game. Remember the execution mechanic introduced with Double Agent or was it Conviction or Double Agent? I can't remember.
Double Agent was the one the execution. I can't remember. Describe to me what the execution mechanic was, real quick.
Where you could mark people, and then you basically
press Conviction,
to execute them all. I think it was Conviction.
Conviction, yeah, Conviction.
So like they have known what it takes to keep this series afloat in video games from this point. And I know that some of the purists are always going to want more pure stealth games. I think that's, where you talk about remakes and stuff. But I think depending on the success of the James Bond game next year, I think that's going to be a big indicator for. I think Ubisoft will have eyes on that. If they don't already have something in the pipeline that we don't know about, I think that will be a good indicator for them as maybe doing something similar to that back in the Splinter Cell universe. What do you think?
Yeah, because I mean, I go back and forth on it because I do think I see a world where I'm playing the game that has the story of the show, but I just don't think that modern Ubisoft would make it, and yeah, I mean, I think there has to be some sort of market shift where, people are buying more stealth games, or because that was the thought that was really sort of the most pervasive was I don't think I think all I'm going to get are movies and animated series and these weird Sam Fisher, cameos. Because I mean, stealth games don't sell well. Those original Splinter Cell games were essentially console sellers for the original Xbox. And so, I mean, the industry has just changed so much. I don't know. I want to believe that there's I think for me, the ideal Splinter Cell game would probably be something that's a little bit more I don't know, this is going to sound weird, but it's going to be games as a service ish, where it's there's just kind of you jump in and there's just missions you can go, and there's all these different, maps and whatever that you can go to, and it's kind of Hitman ish in a way, right? I think the levels can be less open and have fewer NPCs, but overall, I think something like the modern Hitman games, and I think, using James Bond as a comparison is a good example. I don't know. I want to believe, but I don't think, in light of, Ubisoft canceling what I would think was a 10 out of 10, game pitch in that Assassin's Creed game that got canceled. I don't know. I just don't think that they would make something that is groundbreaking in that way again.
So I mean, we can divert here slightly to say that Ubisoft has recently restructured. They have their sub holding company, which is going to hold their biggest major franchises, which is Vantage Studios, which is going to develop the Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six IPs. Which if you're looking at what else all these other studios are going to do, you don't, it's hard to say, maybe it does open them up to taking more risks, knowing that their big cash cows are in this now I think venture capitalist backed subsidiary, where that can just kind of hold their franchises that are successful and that they're going to be less adventurous with, and maybe the rest get the leash loosened a little bit to where they can do some stuff get creative on a new Splinter Cell game or something. But we'll have to see.
I would love that, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's a good thing to call out too, as well, is that it does seem like Ubisoft is going through some changes right now. They've kind of been stuck in their ways for a little bit, and I think the market is kind of showing them that the kind of games that they make aren't really in vogue anymore. I mean, really from my just from a gamer perspective, I feel I just want them to explore the price scale a bit more. I think the Prince of Persia game that came out last year was such a great example of a $20-$30 game that was really, really good and had a lot of substance to it. And I would take at this point an isometric Splinter Cell game, that's just something akin to a John Wick Hex, or I don't know, but I mean, I would like to see them.
Yeah, there was all the 2D Assassin's Creed games that they had for a while, and they had Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was a $40 or $50 game where you could imagine a Splinter Cell game in that model as well. So I think they are getting a little bit more adventurous. It's just about whether they've got a concept that's they think is that will do well in the market.
Well, in order for us to get a new Splinter Cell game, you guys all should go get a Netflix subscription and watch Splinter Cell Deathwatch, and maybe Ubisoft will take that as a sign that more people are interested in Splinter Cell. But one day we will get our Splinter Cell revival. But until then, I guess Matthew and I we're gonna just have to wait, and that'll just do it for us today. We're just gonna log off and go cry about our lack of Splinter Cell. But fear not, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk about The Outer Worlds 2 and some other games. But in the meantime, if you guys don't already, you can follow us on your podcast or subscribe to us on your podcast service of choice. Don't forget that you can go to timekillerspod.com to write your questions and find out what other things that we're getting into. And yeah, don't forget to follow us on all the things. Matthew, anything to say to the kind people before you go?
Long live Splinter Cell.
Long live Splinter Cell. Long live Sam Fisher. And you know what? I will close with one thing. Liev Schreiber, not bad. He did good. He did fine.
Great. Yeah. For these shoes he was stepping into, couldn't have been better.
Long live Liev Schreiber. Long live Splinter Cell. Y'all have a great night. We'll see you on the next one.